Pressure arrives before meaning, and early confidence quietly edits future options out of existence. What feels understood often masks the first permission for loss because certainty itself drifts unnoticed. Once timing and judgment align incorrectly, the system keeps moving while outcomes harden beyond revision. Mass enters under uneven load, and the first metric is simple. Can the system accept reality? When alignment slips this early, every downstream correction becomes a debt with interest. Pre-treatment is built on repetition, but repetition hides the first drift from target conditions. If the feed rate wins even briefly, the line inherits instability before anyone admits it. Separation begins as a promise of order, yet every threshold can be misread as safety. A single overlooked contaminant can rewrite the risk profile long after it is forgotten. Control here looks automatic, but automation only reacts to what it can measure. When sensors lag the surge, the process records normal, while margins quietly collapse. Clean transfer feels stable, and stability is often the most convincing illusion on this floor. If balance is false, the next enclosure becomes the first irreversible bottleneck. Husking is where tolerance becomes consequence, because pressure cannot be negotiated afterward. When settings drift, damage looks like throughput until recovery is no longer possible. The line depends on separation, discipline, not speed, and discipline fails quietly. Understanding separates operators from observers, and silence is where missed recognition begins. Recirculation can correct the miss, but it also multiplies every mistake by repetition. If return flow grows, the system normalizes loss while calling it efficiency. Whitening begins with control, but control becomes fragile when friction is the only language. When limits are crossed, the product changes permanently, even if alarms stay calm. Brand removal looks clean on paper, yet waste paths are where truth leaks out. If extraction weakens, quality degrades invisibly, and blame arrives too late to matter. Each pass promises refinement, but refinement can become erosion when restraint disappears. The hardest failures here are the ones that keep moving forward. Heat and pressure are managed, yet managed is not the same as contained. When stability sounds smooth, it can mean the line is quietly consuming its own margin. polishing shifts the goal from correction to finish, and the finish is easier to fake. If surface results hide internal variance, acceptance becomes an expensive guess. Moisture and smoothing demand precision because small errors scale into permanent defects. When the line appears calm, it may simply be drifting beyond detection. Cooling and stabilization feel like relief, but relief can be another form of delayed consequence. If residence time is misjudged, the next release locks in what cannot be undone. Gates and merges create momentum, and momentum pressures every downstream decision. When flow is consistent, it can mean the system is consistently wrong.
Residence time equalize moisture. First, a slow push-in on resting grain surfaces, then a cut to controlled discharge beginning below.
Sorting is where standards become binary, and binary decisions forgive nothing. If calibration slips good, output is rejected, and bad output passes without ceremony. Inspection can look definitive, yet it only knows what it was trained to notice. Understanding separates operators from observers, and silence hides the moments that prove it. Rejection paths must be trusted because trust is the last control left at speed. When reject logic is questioned, the entire line inherits uncertainty. Final conditioning is about restraint, not correction, because correction windows are gone. If distribution thickens, the system treats clumping as normal until failure feels routine. Weighing begins the accountability phase, where numbers become promises to the outside world. When metering hesitates, the line either starves packaging or floods it with error. Measured holds create tension, because every pause invites drift in the unseen variables. If release timing slips, consistency becomes a story told after the fact. Packaging is a commitment, and commitments punish late doubts. When ceiling parameters are within range, can still be the wrong target. Throughput rises and responsibility shifts from control to consequence. Ownership Understanding separates operators from observers, and silence is how defects earn permission. High-speed takeaway normalizes compression, and compression normalizes small losses. If verification is treated as a formality, the system starts shipping assumptions. Final discharge looks decisive, but it only proves the line can move weight. When output peaks, it can also mean the process has stopped listening to itself. The last flow is closure, not celebration, because every bag carries the ledger forward. If anything was missed, this is where it becomes permanent and nothing can be reclaimed. The system has finished moving and nothing beyond this point can be changed or corrected. Few recognize why it ended exactly here, because most attention fades once motion stops. Recognition separates operators from observers, and what remains silent stays unverified and scarce.